For almost a year now, you've been sending me postcards with inspiration that you found in gardens you visited, and it has been wonderful. I think everyone enjoys it. I certainly enjoy it. But today I want to repay the favor and offer you some inspiration from some gardens that I've recently visited. A couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to tour many gardens in Philadelphia. I think we saw 14 gardens over 4 days with a group. It's called the Garden Bloggers Fling. Now it's sort of open to people who aren't just bloggers, but other content creators. There's about 100 of us there. And we saw some of the best gardens in the United States and probably the world. 4 of them were public gardens. The rest were private gardens. So we had the opportunity to see places that you can't just see all the time. Was spectacular and amazing. All were incredibly inspirational, and I want to share some of the inspiration that I found on this with all of you. Now, a few caveats here. We had 2 days of beautiful weather and 2 days of a pouring rain from a tropical storm, so things kind of disintegrated during those tropical storm days. I did not bring my my good camera with me on those days. My phone got very angry about being soaking wet for 2 days, so some of the images that I took on those days were not great, and I accidentally deleted a card on my action camera that I was using for much of these, which is really a shame because I can't show you those. But I'm not personally that sad about it because I didn't want to get wrapped up in taking pictures and videoing these gardens and miss the experience of being in them. So that was really my focus. I was there to experience these gardens and appreciate them, and what I grabbed along the way is what I grabbed. You'll see lots of people walking through these shots because there were 100 of us trying to get through these gardens in like 45 minutes in some cases. There was a lot of people around. Everyone's taking pictures. Everyone's doing the same thing. So you just have to look past some of that. I'm also sharing with you some of the sort of themes that I noticed throughout these gardens, or the things that I found particularly inspirational. So I hope you take something away from that. And feel free to sort of scrub through the video to get to the bits that you like. I wanted to have an opportunity to sort of give you enough time to enjoy what you're seeing without flipping by too fast. So if I'm moving too slowly for you, you just fast forward right on through, because I guarantee you there'll be something coming that you do like. But one of the themes that very quickly became clear to me when we visited these private gardens was that these gardens all had personality. Nothing was cookie cutter. Now, even though we saw many of the same plants over and over and over again, nothing looked cookie cutter, nothing looked the same. Every garden we went to, and again, these are some of the best gardens, certainly in the area, probably definitely on the East Coast, and probably in the country. All of these gardens were a representation of their owners. You could tell, and some more than others, you knew what the personality of this person was without ever meeting them. These were individual special gardens, and in many cases what I saw is not something I personally would do, but that doesn't mean that I can't appreciate how fabulous it was. So as you're watching some of this, take note of some of those really special little touches. You don't have to do those things. Find your own little special touches. Make your garden special to you and personal to you, because those are the things that made these gardens really special. So with that, I present to you Postcards from Philadelphia. So the primary organizer of this event was Carl Gersons, who happens to be the conservatory manager at Longwood Gardens. So we got just an amazing view of Longwood. This was part of the conservatory, which is kind of the main feature at Longwood. And this is just spectacular. We also got a behind-the-scenes view of Longwood, and we went to their production facility, which is absolutely enormous and immaculately clean. These were some espaliers that they're growing for a new conservatory that is going to be finished next year. So they're already working on that. We also saw their mum production. They do a huge mum display. And I'm not a big one for mums, but these topiary mum creations were quite interesting, very Seussian. Since Longwood's conservatories are kind of ripped up right now, all of their amazing water lilies have been relocated to the production facility for the time being. So we got to see those. We also saw the behind the scenes at their bonsai training area. So this is where they're training bonsais, or these are bonsais that just aren't currently on display. The art of bonsai is mind-boggling to me, but just absolutely stunning to see these living works of art. Then we got to explore Longwood a bit, so we went to the flower walk, which was just absolutely stunning. This is more from the conservatory, which is just a feast for the eyes. Their orchid room is fabulous, and we were there when the light was just so beautiful in it. Another public garden we went to was Stoneleigh, which just opened in 2018, so it's basically a baby garden. I loved it when I saw it in 2019. I loved it even more now. It is a very special place, and you can get in for free. But I love their reimagination of a historical area. The Olmsted brothers did a lot of work here. I believe they were in residence here for something like 50 years. That's Frederick Law Olmsted's sons. And there are remnants of that left, but what is really interesting at Stoneleigh is how they reimagine these things while paying homage to that heritage. For instance, this hedge was quite interesting because it wasn't just a solid hedge of just arborvitae. There's white pine in there, there was some yellow arborvitae. It was a very interesting take on what was a very traditional landscape at one time. I can't recommend a visit to Stoneleigh enough. It's really a very special place that's changing rapidly. They put in this water feature since I was there, and this was quite beautiful too. We made an unscheduled stop at the Scott Arboretum, and I'm very happy we did. What a special, beautiful place this was. The weather was completely lousy when we were there, but it was just interesting and stunning. So worth a visit. And I've saved my favorite public garden for last, and this is Shana Clear. And I've said this before, this is the most amazing garden I've ever been to. I'm sure there are other ones I haven't been to, but the ones I've been to, this is the most inspirational garden, and I was happy to be here for the second time. There is something to behold and take inspiration from everywhere you turn here. Something about the design at Shana Clear often looks effortless and happenstance, even though you know perfectly well it was completely intentional. And so this pool area, of course this is probably the only public garden you'll find with a swimming pool, Everything about it is playing off of the turquoise of that pool. So you get these beautiful patinaed copper roofs that are on these buildings. They've got sea kale growing in front of it that pulls out that turquoise color. The willows that are on the back side of the pool bring out that same color. And it's all very intentional, but it just feels good. You don't, until you look harder, you don't see that. They also had this beautiful bulb lawn of autumn crocus. A big note to myself here to get some autumn crocus. I always love the vegetable garden at Shana Clear because it's extremely productive and extremely beautiful. And then that vegetable garden flows right into their cut flower garden, which is quite different from the last time I was there. This is a much more natural look. It feels like you're in a jungle of beautiful flowers. Basically every garden we went to had bananas, so of course I took note of that, and these were beautiful. This is the tennis court garden at Shana Clear. This is not the best view of it, but I did want to start with that beautiful stand of bananas. Now the public gardens were amazing, but the real treat of this was the opportunity to see absolutely incredible private gardens. I am certain these are some of the best gardens, certainly in that area, but perhaps the country, the East Coast at least. Each one was stunning and interesting. What I noticed was that none of them were perfect, and the best ones showed the personality of their owners. In this garden, she had posted large photographs of before pictures, which was really interesting to see where it had come from. This columnar maple at that same garden was obviously mind-blowing, and we all were in awe of it. It was maybe a foot wide. Another garden we went to was 10 acres and had this bamboo cathedral. Unfortunately, I don't have a video that shows what it looks like when you look up, but it was almost spiritual, this area. It was stunning, and he keeps this bamboo in check with very deep trenches. This is David Culp's beautiful Brandywine cottage garden. Exudes charm. This garden had an incredibly interesting plant palette, just some really interesting things. He overwinters. This garden had some incredibly interesting plants, including a tree fern, and they overwinter their tender plants they rent space in a greenhouse. So that's where everything goes in winter. This is actually that same garden, which had quite a different feel on the front side of it. So this was sort of their front entryway and driveway area. You'll see more of this in the container section as well. We were also fortunate to visit Jenny Rose Carey's garden, which is called Northview. She's an author of some note, and her garden was such an expression of her personality that you felt like you knew her by walking through her garden. Everywhere you turned, there was another vignette. Actually, David Culp's garden was very much like this too. There were surprises at every turn, something interesting to look at everywhere you went. One of the things that I noted at many of these private gardens was a lot of shade. And that's because I think many of these are very mature gardens. So I think that comes with the territory of a mature garden. And these shade gardens were textural masterpieces. The most interesting combinations of plants, even though, as you'll note, there isn't a lot of bright color in these. It's just about shades of green and incredible texture and interest. This is the garden that you saw before with the skinny maple and the stone wall in the front. This moon gate, of course, does exactly what it's supposed to do, which is draws you to the back of the garden. And it transports you to a woodland garden that was just spectacular and interesting. It's like walking into a different dimension. Many of these gardens had large hillsides that were gardened on. It was amazing. Most of these employed a method of planting a stone and then putting the plant behind it. I will never complain about having to plant something in my own garden again, because I saw just how difficult it can be. Of course, I always take special note of container plantings, and of course, there were many to admire here. Longwood often does these container clusters, and this one was pretty spectacular. The horticulturists at Shana Clear are masters at container design, and it helps that they tend to use very, very, very large containers. I would guess that some of these probably have 20 different kinds of plants in them. They rely heavily on texture, and they are absolutely filled with interest. Shana Clear also has a knack for using extremely interesting and different kinds of plants in their containers. Shana Clear, I think, kind of invented this floating flowers concept, which I have used in my own garden. I see them everywhere, which I think is great. This display was particularly great because it featured one of my favorite plants that I think is fun to grow, and that's Gomphocarpus. This display at one of the homes we saw actually was very reminiscent of that Shana Clear style of planting, I thought. I don't know how many containers these people had. I did notice that they were on drip, but I'm going to guess it's in the many hundreds. I really liked this container just kind of standing in the middle on the entryway to the vegetable garden at this garden. These are the containers on the front side of that same house. On the back, it's very much oranges and reds, and on the front, it was a very pink theme. The most spectacular of their containers was also the hardest to get good footage of. It was an enormous container, kind of featured in the center, and it was, I believe, a curly willow in the center of it. This was a huge container, and then all planted up underneath it. But I love the idea of this curly willow. Don't be surprised if you see that idea show up at my house sometime. This same garden also had these beautiful arches that led onto a patio on the back side of their house that was almost exclusively container plantings of different varieties. These are a few vignettes from David Culp's garden featuring containers. This is from Scott Arboretum. Another thing I took note of in these gardens was the lack of soil that I saw. There was almost no place where you could see soil or mulch. There are plants everywhere. Ground covers were relied on everywhere, as well as some really beautiful mass plantings that you'll see in it. It reinforced this idea to me that any plant is extremely interesting when planted in very large numbers. I was enamored with this enormous rock that was in this garden. Underneath this stand of trees is Astilbe chinensis pumila. And I talked to the owner of the garden about this. I said, how can you grow those Astilbes underneath trees with big water-sucking roots? And it turns out that this Astilbe is quite drought tolerant compared to others. Obviously the flowers were spent on this. The texture and using this Astilbe, which was a small growing one, as a ground cover was absolutely phenomenal. This entire hillside is planted in hostas. On this property, there are apparently somewhere in the neighborhood of 14,000 hostas. I have no idea how many are in this area, but let's say a significant portion of those are here. Obviously, there is a deer fence here. Actually, basically every garden we went to had a deer fence other than David Culp's, and he said that he sprays for deer every single day. Here's an image of, you can see how he's just used a few varieties of hostas to create this pattern. And this is what it looks like across the pond or lake that they have there, just so you can get a feel for the vastness of that. And if you want to know how big that lake is, that's me taking that video.